Okay, just to confirm things once again. On-site government, first speaker will be Zidane, second speaker is Keegan, third speaker is Nathan, and the reply speech will be done by Keegan. On-site opposition, the first speaker is Genevieve, second speaker is Ruth, third speaker is Luke, reply speaker is Ruth. Okay. Okay, so to begin, a few house rules. Toilets can only be used in between speeches, so please do not leave the room when the speakers
Can I go toilet before the debate starts?
Yes. And if you wish to prepare your notes, only 30 seconds will be given, then I will start the timer directly after the 30-second mark. So now we'll wait for Nathan to be back. Now, spectators' phones, please make sure to be silent. Thank you. Okay, under the motion, assuming the feasibility exists, this House as the Sarawakian Government would rather be an autonomous state rather than being an independent country. Representing the government, we have SM Lodge. Representing the opposition, we'll have SMK Lawas. Without further ado, let us begin this debate with the Prime Minister's speech. Here.
Give me 30 seconds, please.
Up.
Okay, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we have 26% of all the oil of all the oil in Malaysia in the market, and also 66% of natural gas in Malaysia. But now on to a few things in my speech today. Number one, I have five layers set up. Number one, which is number one is the incentives of the Sarawak government. Number two, what is the problem in the Sarawakian state? Number three, how does an autonomous Sarawak look like? Number four, how does an independent Sarawak look like? And finally, number five, how does Malaysia look like? Now, after that, I'll be moving on. After that will be my arguments. Three arguments today. Number one, safety. Number two, infrastructure. And finally, number three, diplomatic ties. Now, first to my setup. Number one, what are the incentives of the Sarawakian government? The people in the state who like government because we are a democratic state and want more votes because they have to support the government. The country won't be strong anymore and citizens wouldn't want their country to be weak. Number two, the economic development too. With Malaysia, we have a better economy because they provide with economic infrastructure that we won't get that if we are independent. Number three, the economic autonomy. On both sides, we have autonomy. Both sides have autonomy, but we keep the economic infrastructure. All of this, if it works out, it benefits the Sarawak government as a whole, the identity of Sarawak and the image of Sarawak. And if side opposition does not prove they have better economic development, they have lost from the get-go. Now, number two, what is the problem in the Sarawakian government? Number one is the over-reliance on the West and on the West Malaysia. And number two, a lot of the economic prosperity of Sarawak goes through the West, and we need to solve this. Note this panel, we have nothing against the Malaysian government, we are just against the policy that is unjust to Sarawak. Now, number three, how does an autonomous Sarawak look like? It will be one country, but it will be two systems. The people will actually enjoy having a Malaysian identity and having ties with other countries, not needing visas to go, not having free visa, not needing a passport to go to Malaysia, not needing a visa to go to other countries, and also having the security of the country, also having security and the economy of the country, while also having high control of our own resources. Now, number four, how does an independent Sarawak look like? An independent Sarawak will look like this. We'll have to rebuild a new currency, rebuild the infrastructure that will be seized by the government, the economic infrastructure too. We have to rebuild the economic infrastructure. The people don't have the connection with West Malaysia. We also need to rebuild our connections with countries from other world from scratch. It's also difficult because even if we have unlimited money, we still have to rebuild everything, and it will take a long time. Meaning during this time, our economy will be stagnant. Basically saying we have to reduce everything. Now, number five, how does Malaysia look like? Right now, Malaysia looks like it's having a chokehold of Sarawak. Some Sarawakian development infrastructure is purposely delayed or denied just because the federal government wants to prioritize their own development first. Now, onto my burdens. On Gov side, our burden is to let the people in Sarawak to like the government. This is also for the economic development and the economic autonomy. Now, but the burden we'll be giving to opposition is that they have to prove how the economic benefits in the short term are better than all the benefits we propose to you. Now, but before I move on to my arguments, we have some concessions. Yes, we concede that we are giving a little resources such as oil. We are giving little resources such as oil and natural gas, but we are willing to trade this off for number one, security, number two, infrastructure, and number three, economic development. Now, number one, on security. Sarawak, as of this moment, is still unable to sufficiently defend itself. We have very little population to defend our large land area. Rejected. People can call us very easily because we have no military power, because you realize all powerful economy also has a powerful military. Number two, infrastructure. As of status quo, most of the key infrastructure such as roads, highways are funded and owned by the federal government. We'll be missing out on the funding, the building and the subsidies given. Moreover, on the upside of the world, the moment they declare independence, the federal government is likely to retaliate and make them pay for these key infrastructure or demand these key infrastructure back. Now, number three, economic development. The federal government is going to fund the economic development such as industry, resource extraction, and agriculture. These industrial economic development are owned by the federal government and funded by them too. We'll be missing out on these key features that give a large boost to our economy, and on the comparative, the upside will be unable to get these free gifts. Even if OP argues that we can just use the large deposits in our state, I would like to remind you of our state's defensive capability, which is zero. Now moving on to my argument, my first argument on safety. Sarawak in status quo has a large population and large landmass. Sarawak doesn't have the army or security to defend it. In status quo, Sarawak is kept safe because of Malaysia's large resources. But on our side, Malaysia is still obligated to protect us, even though we are an autonomous state. On our side, we get autonomy while maintaining our security too. Number two, the second argument is on infrastructure. A lot of infrastructure in Sarawak is owned by the federal government. On their side, Malaysia is likely to retaliate because they value Sarawak and they don't want to lose their biggest source of oil and gas. This looks like Sarawak is leaving Malaysia and getting their infrastructures taken away, and our side gets autonomy while maintaining our infrastructure. And number three, my third argument will be on diplomatic ties. On the opposition side, if Sarawak leaves Malaysia, they will lose out on the diplomatic relations that Malaysia has built up for us, which definitely benefits us too. If we don't have diplomatic relations, countries are likely to stop trading with us even though we're rich in oil and gas. This is because countries don't trade for the sole purpose of getting oil and gas, but also for the diplomatic purposes. For example, Russia might have the cheapest oil prices, but USA won't trade with them because of their diplomatic relations. On our side, we get autonomy while also retaining the diplomatic relations that will benefit us economically. And with that, I'd like to end my speech. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 29 seconds. Thank you, Prime Minister. Now, to continue on with this debate, let us invite the leader of our opposition. Here,
Ladies and gentlemen, if you break the rose-colored glass of side government, it's obvious that their case falls. Now, why? They lose this case entirely because they ignored the word assuming feasibility. They keep saying how we have to build our country all over again. They have to take infrastructure, they have to redo everything, they have to make new currency. But does this matter? No, because assuming feasibility, we are able to do this. Now, before I go on with anything else, I'm going to clarify what I'm going to do in my debate. First, I'm going to go on with some rebuttals, and then I'll go with framing and characterization, and I'll go with our arguments and impacts, and if I have time, world comparison. Now, side government, they said how our country has natural oils and gas. They also said how because the diplomatic ties, right? These are how countries are likely to stop trading not because they don't only want to trade because of the oils and gas. They want to trade because of the diplomatic ties they have. But why do you think Sarawak isn't as developed as we are right now? It's because we are an autonomous country. It's because other countries don't want to trade with us in the first place. Why? I'm going to explain more in my argument later on. And they also said how Sarawak has no military. They say that we have no army. They say we have no safety because we don't have this because we've become an independent country. But this is let me tell you why. Why does Sarawak doesn't have a strong military? Why does Sarawak doesn't have a strong army? It's because the government is controlling us. Because we are an autonomic state. It's because the government is controlling what we want. The government is oppressing what the Sarawakians need. They're oppressing what we want overall. That's why we don't have a strong military overall. For example, the current program they want to do with the military, did they go on with that? No. Then this is why our military is weak in the first place. And they also said how like I already said, they said how we have to build everything, we have to build new everything, which I said their case falls immediately because they ignored the word assuming the feasibility of the state of Sarawak. And because of this, let me go on with our framing and characterization. First, Sarawak government, it is the body that's governing Sarawak, where they make decisions that affect the entirety of Sarawak. The Sarawakians, citizens on the ground, and also the Sarawak government here is also the democratic one, and democracy still exists on our side. But the difference is that political parties still compete in the democracy to win the election. Now, why is this analysis important? Political parties would want to win these elections because they want the best for their state. Now, therefore, they focus on the economic benefits of the Sarawakians. That's why they need to win these elections. Now, Sarawak government wants the best of Sarawak, obviously. So the only way for them to maintain this is by maintaining their legitimacy. So therefore, The question is which side provides the more benefits to the Sarawakian people? Which side provides better economic development? Now, autonomic states, what do we see? First, you can make decisions on diplomatic issues, domestic economic problems, and also certain issues with the states. Now, number two, however, when it comes to an international relationship, you have no power over them. It's controlled by the government. You have no power for all of these democratic ties in the first place. Now let's look at Hong Kong and Macau, which are in fact autonomous countries. They have special administrative regions. But they don't have seats in the UN General Assembly, and they need to rely on China to advance their agenda. Now, because of this, but China doesn't necessarily care about the interests of SARS. Autonomous states have less power compared to being independent. Why? The federal government can still interfere. For example, Hong Kong and Macau, like we mentioned, China pressed a 2019 national security law despite protests. This means, number one, federal government do not respect the interests of autonomous states. They have power to disregard their interests. And how do we see the independent country? First, they have more power on decisions you make, and you get to have international and diplomatic relations. For example, Singapore, which I will explain more later on. Now, what is our burden for today? Our burden, it serves the interests of Sarawak. Now, what burdens do we have to prove? Number one, we have to prove why there are more economic benefits on they have to prove why their side provides more economic benefits, and they have to prove why it serves the interests of Sarawak. Now, with this, I would like to go on with our first argument based on the keyword, more power in autonomy. Why is now? Because we are independent, we have more power in autonomy. Our decisions and our opinions won't be oppressed by the government. We'll be able to make better decisions for our own country, for our own good, without the government controlling us. Because of this, we have, as an autonomous country, we have to abide the law if on their side. Now, why is it good having power in autonomy? Now, you can make your own decisions for your own good of the country, and you'll be able to make better decisions. Now, you have the power to be able to do the best for the country without others interfering. Now, this causes the limitations of being an autonomous state. On their side, they have a lot of limitations, and because of this, being limited, they are limited in options. Their opinions won't be as heard, and because of this, for example, like Hong Kong and Macau, like I will mention, now Sarawak, an autonomous state, their decisions are oppressed. They don't have the option to be able to fend for their own country because of the Malaysian government is controlling us. Now, because of this, on our side, it causes better democratic economic benefits. Now, which has better economic benefits in the first place? Us. Why? In their world, Sarawak, I'll do a comparison, an easy comparison. Sarawak versus Singapore. Singapore was an autonomous state in Malaysia, and they moved out of Malaysia and to become an independent state, to become an independent country. And though yes, they received backlash, Malaysians saw them as bad. Malaysians saw them like they'll fall to the ground. But did that happen? No. Singapore became one of the most developed countries. Their currency is literally times 3 from ours, and they have better infrastructure, better everything, better economy. Now, what are the impacts? Sarawak won't be limited by these decisions, and they won't be oppressed by the government. They can do the best for what they want, and because our side, we want the best of Sarawak, and we want better economic development, which their side cannot claim. And this is what I endeavor to be further to propose.
Spoke for 7 minutes and 18 seconds. Thank you, Leader of Opposition. And now to continue on with the government's case, let us invite the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
I will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, note the framing coming from first. We are one country but with two systems. We have control over our state. Because note the motion, assuming feasibility, we would be an autonomous state. Autonomy means that you have control. You cannot argue about the control that Sarawak has because we tell you the amount of control and the level of control is parallel on both sides. The wall you needed to defend on your side was whether being totally separate from Malaysia as a whole will be beneficial for Sarawak, and you have failed this burden coming from first. Now, my speech today will consist of two parts. Number one, on 3 responses on feasibility, on defensive capabilities, and number 3, of Chinese relations with its territories. And then after that, 2 arguments on number 1, disapproval from the people on the ground, and number 2, what is actually gained by Sarawak in our world. Now, first response on feasibility. Well, you keep arguing on this fact about assuming feasibility. You assume feasibility that Sarawak is able to leave Malaysia. You do not assume feasibility on what Sarawak is able to achieve after that. We assume that Sarawak will not be blocked out in Parliament from leaving Malaysia. That is the meaning of this motion. Number 2, the government, you try to say how the government controls us, meaning that we have no strong military. Well, on our side, we do not need strong military because we are covered by the federal government. We only said that your side cannot defend yourself because you do not have defensive capabilities from the government, which is something you lose out on. And realize this, even if you have lots of money, you need lots of time and effort to build up this capability. And we tell you that every single country with a strong economy actually needs strong military power, because if you do not, you'll be easily coerced by foreign powers. This is the reason why so many economically powerful countries eventually get coerced and bought over by richer and more militarily powerful states. Number 3, on Chinese relations with its with territories. We tell you this argument is totally outframed because China is a communist country, we are a democratic country. It is outframed. But before, yes.
Don't you think when Sarawak can control their own natural resources, they can use those natural
No,
resources?
we have control over our resources as well. The only thing we consider is that fine, we will give over maybe a certain amount to the West, but we exchange this infrastructure, we exchange this for military, and we exchange this for defensive capabilities and diplomatic ties. When we have autonomy, we can gradually decrease the amount of oil and gas given to the West because we have control. Stop arguing on the amount of control we have because it's parallel on both sides. Now, first argument on how people are likely to disapprove this move of the Sarawakian government. Because note the incentives of the Sarawakian government. We have told you from first that the Sarawak government needs to be in favor of the people, and the people need to be in favor of the government for them to remain in power. That is the only incentive for the Sarawakian government. We tell you people are likely to disapprove of the government because people have families in the West. Malaysia is so interconnected that people have connections in both sides. If you block out one side, people on the ground are likely to rebel against the government because now their connection with the West is likely to be cut off. Number 2, people are also proud of the national identity. Let's say you go to a foreign country or you win a foreign tournament, you do not stand on the highest stage, I am Sarawakian. You stand there and you say, I am Malaysian, because it is the Malaysian identity that people share, and insofar as you cannot deny this, we tell you that people rebel against the government. And number 3, we tell you that people have economic ties with the West. People in Sarawak do business in the West. You are likely to cut this off on your side, which means that people are likely to be extremely unhappy on your side. The impact of this is very simple. Number 1, on how Sarawakians will disapprove of the move, and number 2, how they will lose support of the government and they are unlikely to vote for them, and they are also unlikely to be willing to contribute to the government because they are unhappy with the move of the government cutting off their relationships with the West, which I've proven to you why it's so important in today's debate. Next, why is this actually so important for the state? It's because the Sarawak government wants support and they want to win elections. If it goes against their incentives, they will not do so. And we tell you that incentives is for support, and support is not achieved on your side. Next, how does this actually look like? I tell you, it looks like multi-state trade, which is likely to be harder and more expensive because there's likely to be higher import and export relations because you are no longer within the same country, you are trading with a foreign country. There are likely to be higher relationships, and when these trade routes are already established, now everything needs to be cut and rebuilt because of this new economic landscape. And next, we tell you there's also likely to be higher taxes because it's inter-country, okay? Now, the comparative on our side is very simple. On our side, the benefits are twofold. Number 1, the people are likely to be able to maintain easy connection with the national economy and the national identity. And number 2, the state is able to develop, benefiting the state, which means that people will be happy because the state is able to benefit. Note that we are autonomous, we have control of our economy, so we call every single thing about control that's been said by side opposition. Because we have control, and we tell you the benefits are twofold because we also gain the benefits from the current Malaysian state. But so, what exactly are the benefits we gain from this state? We tell you it's threefold. Number one, on infrastructure. Because you need to realize this one thing. Most key infrastructure in Sarawak is actually owned by the state government. They own things like governmental buildings, they own things like roads and highways. These are things that make a functioning economy. These are the things that you will lose out on side opposition. Yes, even though the West might not bomb your roads and bomb your diplomatic structures, they will demand for you to pay for it, because now you have left their country. You're likely to make them extremely angry, because you need to know one thing. Sarawak is extremely important to the West. When the West loses out on this very important piece of land, they are likely to retaliate. You cannot tell me that they will not retaliate. And we tell you that they will retaliate in one way, which is to take back its infrastructure, and also to cut off certain ties with Sarawak. Well, sure, Sarawak can rebuild this, but we tell you it takes time before stakes any POIs. Okay. Second, we tell you that safety is likely to be higher on our side, because all defensive capabilities come from the federal government. Well, yes, there is no imminent threat of invasion. However, your state is likely to be more easily coerced, because if you have no military protection, if you have no military superiority, people, for example, China or more influential countries like Indonesia, are likely to coerce you into unfair economic trade deals, because you simply have no chance of defending yourself. Number three, on diplomatic ties. You need to realize, right? Currently, the Sarawakian identity is tight under Malaysia. They have well-established ties with foreign countries, which is what helps their economy. We tell you all these things are likely to be cut off. Even if you want to trade oil and gas with another country, it's unlikely to be a direct trade deal, and it's likely that you have to make these economic trade deals built across in the longer time, which we tell you during that period your economy is likely to be stagnant. So our case today is extremely simple. We tell you how, right? Number one, people on the ground are likely to retaliate because of the connections people have with the West. Malaysia is extremely interconnected between both parts, and insofar as you split this connection, people on the ground will retaliate, which means that they will retaliate against the government, and it goes against the incentives of the Sarawakian government in this debate. So proud to propose.
Speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 58 seconds. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. And now, to continue with the opposition's case, that is invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Hear, hear.
Final speech, indeed. Hello, I think SM Lodge has already lost this debate once they utterly misinterpret what the word autonomous state means. This is what I'm going to clarify what this motion means, right? Autonomous state doesn't mean you're a country. You are still limited by things in the country, by the federal laws and the federal things that happens in the country. Side opposition said that themselves, that they need Malaysia, but needing Malaysia means that you're going to sacrifice your own economic benefits, you're going to sacrifice the Sarawakians just to follow the government laws. Here's the thing, they tell you one country, two systems. But the thing is, it's not one country, two systems, right? It's more like one country and a state with another system. But the problem with that is, even though you have your own system, note that you still have to follow the government laws that are provided by the government. I'll explain more on that, on how it harms the Sarawakians in my argument later on. But here are my rebuttals, right? First of all, they talked about like how we failed to prove that it would be better to separate. But my first speaker has already told you how it would benefit the economy. They clearly didn't listen to our like arguments at all. We tell you it would be better for the power. You will have more autonomy over your own country. You have more autonomy to make your own economic decisions and make what's best for your country. You aren't like you can't make your own decisions if you are under a government that like strives to achieve every single national agenda. Your own agenda as Sarawak is going to be sidetracked. It's going to be like ignored. Whereas you yourself, if Sarawak was a country, it can do what's best for its national agenda for themselves. They can make decisions that are best for themselves. Next, they say like, my third speaker asked a POI about how we would like giving they say that you are controlling like Sarawak as a state, like you have control over Sarawak. But we've already told you that autonomous state, you still don't have full country over it as a state. We've already told you that is more like you don't have full power. So we tell you you will have more autonomy and more power on our side. Next. Yes?
What's your definition of an autonomous state if they do not have control over their policy, if they do not have control over their trade?
I've already made it clear that yes, sure, you have somewhat type of like control over your state, your country as an autonomous state, but the difference here is you still have to follow the federal laws. You still have to follow the laws made by the general government of Malaysia. That means your aim and your national agendas as Sarawak will be sidetracked by the national agendas. Next, they talk about like connection with the West and how you would like cut off like family in the West, right? But the problem is, I don't see how that is relevant to the economic benefits. I don't see how that contributes to the debate, so I can't credit that at all. And plus, we are still doing diplomatic ties as the West. With the West. It doesn't mean that just because Sarawak is an independent country, it doesn't mean that we're suddenly going to be isolated from the world, that we're not going to do diplomatic ties. That's not reality and that's not logical, okay? Next, they talk about invasion and like being coerced by other countries and like because we have no chance on defending ourselves, right? But we can rebut that by just showing you the example of Singapore. My first speaker has already told you how Singapore is now a developed country despite being an autonomous state and getting kicked out of Malaysia like less than a century ago. But the thing is, even if invasion and coercion and retaliation were to happen, number one, why would they do that? They will face backlash if they do that. And number two, there are laws protecting us, okay? That is the reality. Next, moving on to two more arguments to support our case. So our second argument is based on the keyword international relationships. This is where I flip their entire case regarding international relationships. They say we don't have access to international relationships because now nobody wants to trade with us, right? But we tell you international relationships are actually more likely to happen on our side. Because then, number one, if you're an autonomous state, it's likely harder for you to get diplomatic relationships. Like, let's look at the example of Hong Kong and Macau, right? They're basically being controlled by China. They say China is a communist country, that's why it cannot be credited to this debate. But we tell you, it doesn't matter because it is still an autonomous state. It is still the same situation. We are still arguing about autonomous states, not about like communism or like republicans or democracies here. We tell you, they are still being controlled by China and they cannot make decisions that are best for their own country. So we tell you, when it comes to benefits coming from international relationships, we can actually claim those impacts. There are domestic economic benefits on your side, sure, but we trade that off so stronger relationships and stronger diplomatic ties and stronger international relationships on our side of the house. On our side, we have more access to diplomatic relationships because we can actually do imports and exports and we actually know what is our national agenda. We won't align with the interests of Malaysia, we align with our interests as Sarawak because this debate is what benefits Sarawak the most. And we've already told you about how international relationships, when you align those interests with, the aim of these ties, for example, you align them with what the interests of your countries are, then you can only strengthen, only then you can get the best out of these diplomatic relationships. We give them power and autonomy to strengthen these diplomatic relationships, something that they didn't have access to previously as an autonomous state. Because as an autonomous state, I don't see how you would get international relationships. That's not logical because it was never a country to begin with. So lastly, on our argument based on the keyword benefits for citizens on the ground, we have been oppressed and we have been stigmatized because we were Sarawakians by the majority in Malaysia. Because we are an autonomous state, but we are still stigmatized and we are still oppressed. Why? Because we follow the government's best interest. We don't follow our best interest. We don't do what's best for the economic development of Sarawak, and we don't do what's best for the Sarawakians. We don't focus on the economy, and only that can be achieved when Sarawak is an independent country. When we have our own government, we have more power. We make better economic decisions for our own economy and our own people. We're not going to be limited by national agendas. We are going to have our own domestic agendas, and we are going to have our own national agendas that aligns best with the citizens, the economy, and the sovereignty of Sarawak. How it will be good for the... What are the economic benefits of being an independent country then? We would tell you that we would have stronger and better diplomatic relationships because then we can actually do trades and exports with other countries as a country. You cannot say that you want international relationships when you were never a country to begin with. And we tell you, society can live easier lives in comparison to the lack of economic opportunities previously on their side of the house. And we tell you, because we actually know what is good for the economy, we want the best for the Sarawakian people, we serve the interest of what is best for the Sarawakian government and Sarawak as a country. I'm never prouder to represent SMK Lawas in this debate. Strive for excellence.
Speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 13 seconds. Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Now, to continue on with the government's case, let us invite the government whip to hear.
Chair, three things in my speech today. Number one, our responses. I respond to their points about autonomous states. Number two, the power of autonomous states. Number three, how following the law is fine. And number four, how diplomatic ties are more present on our side. Number two, I'll follow on clashes on which side is best for the actor, which is the Sarawakian government, and I'll finish with how our side take this debate, even if our worst case is better, even if we use our worst case against their best case. But now, going on to my rebuttals. They stated that autonomous states have less power. Okay, they have largely not proven how autonomous states look like in the world. Since they're unclear with their policy, I don't know how autonomous states look like in the world at all. Autonomous states on our side is one state, two systems. They have the power over the country and their own resources, but they still have to follow the laws because see to that. And even if they don't have any power, right, as what they're trying to paint a picture on our side, even if we don't have any power, we still trade off the fact that we don't have power for security, for infrastructure, for diplomatic ties. Number two, they said that Sarawak doesn't have an army or doesn't have an infrastructure because Sarawak is oppressed by the Malaysian government that doesn't allow them to undergo their projects. Now, let me just point out here that they are basically just stating the status quo. On our side, we say that we concede that in the status quo there is a problem that Sarawak is oppressed. Therefore, we're trying to push that claiming autonomy as a state is better than completely leaving Malaysia and being independent, as what I have stated, since the first speaker. Our side concedes that this is a problem with status quo, and we solve it by becoming an autonomous state so we gain control. Now, but we still maintain the security, the economic infrastructure, and the diplomatic ties that's already present in status quo. Number three, they said that autonomous states still need to follow the laws of the federal agency. Well, number one, our side has already stated since the first speaker, how we have one state, two systems. And even if we really have that law or the power that the government can boss us around, even though that's not possible, let's say like it is, right? We still win because of the fact that we have all these benefits, they have never weighed how those benefits that we have proposed just invalidate the fact that, oh, we have more power. Okay.
Now, number two, is following the Malaysian laws really so bad if that you give up all the benefits that we have proposed? We have already proposed to you the benefits that we get diplomatic ties, the benefits that we get better economy, the benefits that we get a more stable security. These are all the benefits that we have provided to you. They have never weighed how the benefit of power actually fares against our benefits that we have provided to you. Number four, they said that their side is still doing diplomatic ties, and they claim that they have more diplomatic ties than our side. Well, we are not saying that your side has no diplomatic ties. We are saying that by leaving Malaysia, you cut off all the diplomatic ties that you had while you were in Malaysia. You lose all of those diplomatic ties that you have in status quo, and it will be hard to rebuild them. They have never debated likelihood on why our side does not have diplomatic ties, and that's why we easily take this response. But even if, as an autonomous state, even if we don't get diplomatic ties, we don't care, because we still have Malaysia's diplomatic ties that largely benefits us economically and every other sector else. Now, moving on to my clashes. Now, I would like to weigh which side is better for the actor in this motion, which is the Sarawakian government. The only stakeholder here, which means that whoever wins this clash, wins the debate. We tell you that it's clearly our side. On our side, we tell you that we get autonomy. We tell you that we get security. We tell you that we maintain diplomatic ties. And we tell you that we maintain infrastructure. We tell you that the autonomy is parallel on both sides, and even if it isn't, we still win based on scale. Number two, on their side, they said that they get more power and they be able to make more decisions. Number one, I would like to propose that they never weigh on which side is better. They never weigh which side benefits fare along each other, which is what I will do in today's debate. If you notice, they've already pushed you how the power and able to make decisions is not enough to validate you losing all the benefits you have told you. If you become an independent state, you get power, but as an independent state, you get more things that you have to do. You have to make a new currency. You have to establish new infrastructure. You have to establish new economic diplomatic ties, and you have to do so many things. They have never said how they are able to do that, how they are likely to do that, or how the power is still better than that. They have never said this. Therefore, we easily take this clash because we tell you that these benefits are the thing that Sarawak benefits the most from. Now, moving on to our best case and worst case. Their best case, Sarawak leaves as an independent nation, and let's assume that the people are fine with it, they won't retaliate. And let's say that Malaysia will not retaliate and take back the infrastructure. It still wins against our worst case, which is the fact that we become an autonomous state and we lose a lot of money because we give a lot of oil and gas. Notice that even in our best case and worst case, we still win because we still get the security, we still get the infrastructure and diplomatic relations, because the government is obligated to give these benefits to us. This side has to build it back up even in their best case. Their side has to build all these relations, has to build all this infrastructure back up that the Malaysian government is already providing to them. They have to build it up even in the best case. That is why their economy stays stagnant. They claim that they have power and to make decisions, but they do not have power because they have no resources, no infrastructure, and no economic benefits. That is why we easily take this debate. Even if our best case goes against their worst case, we still win this debate clearly. I am so proud to propose. Thank you.
Speakers spoke for 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Now to continue the opposition's case, let us invite the opposition whip. Here.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the biggest problem with side proposition today is that they try to propose an autonomous state, but when there's countless examples of how autonomous states doesn't work. So their entire case was that about like one country, two system, right? But it doesn't work. We have told you about like Hong Kong and Macau, special administrative regions, so on and so forth. Sure, they started out as special administrative regions and they started out as autonomous states. But then that autonomy was being got infringed by the Chinese government, and we saw that in the 2019 National Security Law protest, right? They promised autonomy, but then the Chinese government infringed on those rights. Why is that bad for the economy then? It means that Hong Kong doesn't have the power and authority to make economic decisions after that. Also, I would like to point out that Sarawak also started as an autonomous state according to the 63 agreement, right? But then that autonomy got infringed by the Malaysian government. So even if you're able to provide autonomy to Sarawak right now, how can you ensure that you're able to provide that kind of autonomy 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now? We tell you that the autonomy is also going to be violated after that. But before that, yes, I'll take a point.
China is not a democratic state, it is
Okay.
communist.
I'm going to deal with that later on in my rebuttals. But firstly, I would like to deal with some substantives from side competition. So first thing I want to deal with is that they try to tell you that, okay, Malaysia is going to provide better economic infrastructure because like Malaysia is more wealthy, right? But we tell you that, like, we give you the example of how Singapore doesn't need Malaysia's help, and despite of the disadvantages, like they don't have natural resources, they don't even have access to water. But then when they got independent from Malaysia, they get so many economic benefits to the point that they even have like higher currency rate compared to Malaysia. So now on the point on like one country, two system, like on the point of feasibility, they try to say, okay, it means on our side we need to use passport to go to Malaysia. Okay, but they didn't analyze like what are the economic benefits of the passport thing. No analysis on that. But two, we can also have something like the Eurozone where we are different countries, but then we don't need passports to go into other countries, right? But thirdly, even if passport is so important, why not we just unite all the countries in the world and allow them to go to different countries without using passport? Okay, and then they gave a statement, Malaysia has a chokehold on Sarawak. We tell that it's because of the fact that Malaysia has a chokehold on Sarawak, that we don't want to give them the chance to infringe our oppressions, but we will want to get out of that country because it gives more power to the Sarawakian government at the end of the day. Now then, moving on to the concession. That their concession was that they're willing to give up natural resources for economic development. But we tell you, you cannot make that concession because those natural resources are so important to finance the development, the economic structures in Sarawak right now. And status quo is that Sarawak is providing 90% of their revenue in natural resources to the Malaysian government. So we don't think, so if you're giving up those natural resources, it's going to lead to a lot of problems for Sarawak. Right. Now then, moving on to the claim that Sarawak doesn't have security and that they need Malaysia's help to provide them kind of military support. Again, we told you the benefits, but Sarawak is an independent country. They have more power on their natural resources, and they can use those revenue when they sell to countries like the USA, China, and so on to improve their security. But secondly, also on the example of Singapore, Singapore didn't need Malaysia's help because they have help from international organizations, from the United States, so on and so forth. They didn't need Malaysia's help, but then they are able to defend themselves in this region from Malaysia. Now then, onto the point about how Malaysia is likely to retaliate if Sarawak leaves to Malaysia. First thing, we tell you that it wouldn't occur on our side of the house because we have things like the United Nations. They wouldn't allow that to happen. And also we have China and the United States. They wouldn't allow this to happen because it's going to cause regional instability in this country. That's going to be bad for the economic interest. So they're not going to allow China to retaliate. But second thing, also, by the way, we gave you the example of Taiwan, right? Like how the United Nations actively try to prevent China from invading Taiwan. So it shows that they do have the interest and incentives to prevent that kind of thing from happening. But secondly, also we have already talked to you about the motion. It's about assuming feasibility. So I don't think Malaysia is going. So it's assuming feasibility. Malaysia. It's likely that the Sarawakian government, after they got independent, they're not going to face this problem because it's assuming feasibility. But thirdly, even if Malaysia can make those retaliation, we tell you that Sarawak is going to get an outpouring of support from different countries around the world and from the United Nations. Like, we saw how there was support for Papua New Guinea when they got independence from Indonesia. So that's very important because then Malaysia would not retaliate because of the support for Sarawak. And by the way, they're not likely going to retaliate because we still have diplomatic relationships with Malaysia and we can go on to the negotiating table to talk about that. Now then, they gave us this statement from second speaker, power is parallel on both sides. How can you give this definition? We already provide you the definitions, the framing, clarification on how, when we got independent, we can have more autonomy over the international relationship. We control the import and export of our country. But then secondly, it's funny how you came out with the statement that power is parallel on both sides, and then you went on to ramble about how like the military is more powerful on your side, right? Now then, I want to then reply to my POI, then they say that, okay, Sarawak can still control their own natural resources on their side of the house. But we have to look at status quo right now. Sarawak is an autonomous state, and Sarawak gives like 90% of their natural resources to Peninsular Malaysia. And two, perhaps even status quo says that they're getting higher share of those natural resources. But then, don't you think when we get independent, it's better if we get 100% of those natural resources and area for them, so that we can reap the economic benefits from them. Now, moving on to the point about like multi-state trade is harder with Malaysia because the trade rules need to be reviewed or something. We tell you that it's because when you have more economic benefits because of the natural resources on here, you're better economically. So you have the upper hand on the negotiating table when you negotiate with Malaysia on things like trade. So then trade will be much easier on our side of the house as compared to your side, where like you don't have the economic benefits and you don't have the economic upper hand when you negotiate with Malaysia. Also, still, we get to directly deal with other countries on trade. So I don't think why Malaysia is necessarily very important, right? Now moving on to like Sarawak can have their own government building, like opposition has less of that. We have more power over the government building on our side of the house when we get more power, right? Okay, then, now to the point about like connection is going to be cut off between Sarawak and Malaysia. Connection was cut off between Singapore and Malaysia, and that doesn't prevent Singapore from being the most prosperous country in like Southeast Asia. And last thing, China is a communist state. We're talking about democratic countries. Okay, Malaysia being a democratic government doesn't prevent them from oppressing us. It doesn't prevent them from violating the 63 agreement, forcing us to teach English as our official language, forcing us to give up our natural resources. So I don't think how this analysis is very important. So what are the main case of today's debate? Which side has a more powerful military? So the entirety of the argument is that Malaysia provides military support, which is very important. When we tell you, when we have those natural resources, we can improve our security spending, and also get military support from countries like China, United States, and also get support from international organizations. So military is more important on our side because you can use that military to safeguard economic interests, right? And lastly, on which side ensures economic interests of Sarawak? We tell you that because we have more international relationships on exports and imports, and we have more autonomy over the natural resources, we get to improve our economy much better on our side. And because of all these reasons, we're so proud to oppose this motion today. Thank you.
Speakers spoke for 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Thank you. Opposition whip. Okay, so now without further ado, let us move to the opposition reply speaker to conclude with the opposition's case. Here.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, panel, I think SM Lodge obviously has already lost this debate when they misinterpret the motion from the start to the end. I am bringing this up as my opening line again for my reply speech because they completely ignore the word assuming the feasibility and the word autonomous state. The biggest problem in their case was they don't understand what the word autonomous state means. They said one country, two systems. But the problem with that is we've already told you, you can't say you're an autonomous state, but then you try to comply with the government laws in that country. We would tell you, on our side, we serve what's best for the Sarawakian economy and for the Sarawakians themselves. Another technical issue on their side is they don't understand the word assuming feasibility. So any question regarding how we cannot build the economy from ground up, how we cannot build Sarawak as an independent country cannot stand because the word assuming the feasibility exists in the motion. Plus, they gave another technical issue on their side was they never gave any analysis on the argument regarding federal government. They never told us how that would benefit the economy. So we can't credit that argument at all. So moving on to our burdens. Why do we win this debate? Number one, We prove why it will benefit the economy. We are not going to be limited by national agendas. We are going to serve the best interest of the Sarawakian economy, therefore serving the best interest of Sarawakians. That we prove why it would also benefit diplomatic ties, because you can't say that you have international relationships. You can't say you have diplomatic ties that serve the interest of your state when you were never an independent country to begin with. You could not have control over your state and your national agendas yourself if you were an autonomous state to start with. Sure, you can have control, but you are still going to be limited by national agendas, as we have told you in our entire case. We also prove why it will be in the interest of Sarawak, because it aligns best with the interest of Sarawak, it aligns best with what Sarawak wants to achieve, it aligns best with Sarawak's economic development. We also prove to you why it will benefit Sarawakians economically and socially. Next, moving on to clashes, right? Which side benefits the Sarawakian government more? We tell you us, because as we've told you again and again, but they refuse to accept it, that we do what's best for Sarawak. We align the best interest, we align what's the best interest for Sarawak, something that they can achieve through not only things like international relationships, not only things like diplomatic ties, but also through things like more power and more autonomy as an independent country. They never gave any response to that point from our side as well. Which side provides more autonomy? We tell you us. We are not going to be limited by the government. We are not going to be limited by national agendas. You can't call an autonomous state without autonomy. Which side maintains Sarawak's sovereignty? We tell you us, because we give them more power and more autonomy, as we told you in our first argument. Which side benefits the diplomatic ties? Also us, because we tell you, you start off as an independent country, you have the rights and you have the power to create these international relationships, and you can make international decisions and national decisions that are best for your country and for Sarawak themselves. We tell you why we win. Number one, we presented you on the argument based on the keyword more power and more autonomy. We tell you, you are able to make your own decisions, especially since Sarawak has been oppressed since the start until right now. So we tell you, it is important that Sarawak takes action and live up to their own responsibility to actually be able to govern themselves and make what's best for their country. We tell you, we also give you the second argument based on the keyword international relationships. You do what's best, and you do what you can, and you are able to achieve what's best for your economy through things like international relationships. We tell you, you are able to make international trades, you are able to make relationships with other countries. What they said about international relationships and diplomatic ties not existing on our side cannot stand if they cannot prove why international relationships are better on their side. Next, we tell you it benefits the citizens on the ground because you have better economy and better social life on our side. Because we understand what Sarawakians want, because we understand what's the best benefit for like Sarawakian government, and we want Sarawak to be free, we want Sarawak to be autonomous. It's very clear, we take this debate today.
The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Thank you, opposition reply. Now, to conclude with this debate, let us invite the government reply speaker. Hear, hear.
I will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everything opposition has said in this debate hinges on the assumption that after we leave Malaysia, we will become the next Singapore, we will become the next United States. Firstly, there is no process analysis on how this actually happens, and I tell you that note that this debate does not happen at the time of the independence revolution. This debate happens when the world is already so well structured with ties established between every single route in the world. What you lose is this long-standing structure which you have not defended. In my speech today, I'll be going over a few points of contention. First, on autonomous states. Second, on economic betterment. And third, on people's approval. Firstly, what does an autonomous state actually look like? It's actually very ironic how opposition keep on arguing on this fact, but actually provide no counterfactual on how autonomous states actually look like. So we are forced to believe what we have defined. It is not Hong Kong and Macau. IPO, and you promised a response, but you did not give a single response. Because I tell you, China is communist, China is not comparable to what Malaysia is, because Malaysia is diplomatic, is democratic. You did not give any explanation. autonomous states actually look like being in the same country but having control over state decisions. You keep on telling me we have to follow the laws of the nation. Well, we are fine. If we need to follow a basic constitution, which is just basic rights, we are fine. But the thing is, we have economic independence. If you have provided us no counterfactual, we are forced to believe that we have control over our economic trade policies. Now, next, on economic betterment, there is simply no logical link between how it actually happens. The only thing the side opposition tells us is that independence equals trade boom. How does it actually happen? Government tells you that there are two limiting factors. Number one, on diplomatic ties, which by the way, we just take from Malaysia. They keep on saying we have no diplomatic ties. We just take it from Malaysia and we tell you we are willing to concede a certain amount of natural resources for these benefits. And they try to frame this as like 19% of their natural resources. But we are autonomous. We give them fine, 5%, 10%. Malaysia is happy because Sarawak is extremely important in the natural resource market, and Malaysia will provide the benefits here. Now, people don't just trade for resources. It is something we have told you from first. People trade because of diplomatic ties as well. People trade with people within their diplomatic circles. It's just like how countries within the G7 trade within countries in the G7 at higher amounts because they have established diplomatic connections. This is something that you are unable to build on side opposition, and we tell you, even if we take you at your best, it's likely to take a long time. Because a new country is not just admitted into the International Trade Organization in one day. It takes time. And insofar as you cannot make it in one day, we tell you your economy will be stagnant at that point. Number two, on infrastructure. Things like infrastructure for economic growth, like ports, things like airports. These are things that are owned by the Malaysian Aviation Group and things like that. It's controlled by the federal government and it's likely to be taken away on your side. Now, why is the approval of the people actually important? Know the incentives of the government agreed by both sides. A strong economy and happy people, which means more votes for the government. That is uncontested in this debate. Now, where does this actually come from? We tell you it's twofold. Number one, a strong economy where people have better living conditions, where people have more opportunities, because we tell you it's twofold. We gain the benefits from Malaysia and we also gain the benefits of being an autonomous state, which we have proven throughout the entire debate. Number two, people's overall happiness, because they have easy connection with their families in the West. We tell you these two states are so interconnected that people actually care about what's happening within Malaysia. People care about the Malaysian identity. You do not deny that you're Malaysian because you are proud of the Malaysian identity, which went uncontested in this debate. This is not outframed as what opposition tried to do. Nothing in the motion restricts this debate to only economic outcomes. It is a value judgment of the entire picture of Sarawak leaving Malaysia or not. We have proven twofold harms on your side with no response. This debate went uncontested, so proud to propose.
Speakers spoke for 4 minutes and 5 seconds, and hence this debate concludes. Congratulations to both teams. You may now cross the floor to shake hands. Please do proceed back to the main auditorium.
We get the result there?
Yes.